Welcome to the midnight hour. The bell echoed through the halls, a jarring contrast to the butterflies fluttering in Maya's stomach. There, leaning against his locker, phone tucked under his arm, was Ethan. Tall, dark hair framing eyes that seemed to hold a million unspoken secrets. He'd been her secret crush since forever, and now, catching her gaze, he winked. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Stolen glances in class turned into whispered jokes in the lunchroom. A shy hello blossomed into weekend dates and stolen kisses. Ethan was everything she ever wanted, charming, funny, attentive. He made her feel special, like the center of his universe. It was intoxicating. Then came the calls. It started innocently enough. A sweet goodnight call just after midnight. A heartfelt confession about how much he missed seeing her. Maya, smitten, couldn't get enough. Late-night conversations became a ritual, a way for them to extend the magic of their dates into the quiet hours. But soon, the sweetness curdled. It was subtle at first. A raised eyebrow when another boy dared to hold the door for her. A passive-aggressive text about the revealing top she wore to school. Maya brushed it off as possessiveness, a misplaced expression of his affection. The possessiveness twisted into something darker as the weeks went by. Texts demanding to know her every move, down to the names of the girls in her history class. He'd call her out on details she hadn't mentioned, like what color shirt a specific classmate wore. It started to feel like he was watching her, always. The final straw came after a fight with her best friend, Sarah. Maya, upset and seeking solace, reached out to Ethan. Instead of comfort, she was met with a cold fury. "She doesn't understand you," he hissed, his voice devoid of warmth. "You need to stay away from her. She's bad for you." That's when the fear, a cold, slithering snake, began to coil around Maya's heart. Ethan wasn't just interested, he was controlling. He wanted to isolate her, to make her world revolve solely around him. Tears streaming down her face, she broke up with him over the phone. The line went dead. Relief warred with unease. Then, at precisely midnight, the phone rang again. Heart hammering, Maya answered. Silence. Just heavy, oppressive breathing on the other end. Every night, the same. No words, just the chilling sound of someone listening to her every terrified breath. Sleep became a distant memory. Maya confided in her best friend, but even the assurance brought little relief. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, Maya picked up the phone and screamed, "Leave me alone." The response was immediate, a guttural growl that sent shivers down her spine. The phone clattered to the floor as the line went dead. In the following weeks, the calls stopped, replaced by a more terrifying presence. It came in the whispers she heard on the bus, the fleeting shadows that seemed to follow her home, the feeling of being watched, an unseen gaze burning into her back. One Friday afternoon, she finally saw him. Ethan, or at least someone who looked exactly like him, stood across the street, a twisted smile on his face. But his eyes, they were wrong. Black, bottomless pits that seemed to suck the light out of the world. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. The police dismissed her claims of a stalker, attributing her fear to the recent breakup. Maya, however, knew better. Ethan, or something masquerading as him, wasn't finished with her. He was out there, waiting, the midnight calls replaced by a chilling realization, he wasn't obsessed with her anymore. He wanted her terrified. And Maya, once a love-struck teenager, was now a prisoner in her own life, haunted by a darkness that wore the face of her first love. The whispers in the hallways intensified, morphing from indistinct murmurs into her name, laced with malice. Nightmares replaced sleep, filled with visions of Ethan's chilling smile and those bottomless black eyes. Her once vibrant life became shrouded in fear, a constant struggle to keep her head above the rising tide of paranoia. She moved apartments, changed her phone number, even enrolled in self-defense classes. but the feeling of being watched never fully abated. The world had become a stage, and she was the sole performer, constantly on edge, waiting for her stalker to make his next move. One day, a flyer fluttered to the ground in front of her. Missing person. It was Ethan's picture, a younger version, beaming back at her. The caption, last seen 2 weeks before Maya and Ethan's first date. A cold dread settled in her stomach. Ethan, the boy she'd fallen. The first night, the buzz of her phone startled Chloe awake. Groaning, she fumbled for it on her nightstand, the screen a harsh beacon in the darkness. 12:03 a.m. One missed call. Unknown number. Annoying, but probably a telemarketer. She swiped it away, rolling over to try and reclaim her sleep. The second night, the buzz came again. 12:05 a.m. This time, 2 missed calls. Same number. Chloe's stomach clenched. It was creepy. She blocked the number, hoping for the best. Hope dwindled night after night. The calls became relentless, a nightly ritual at precisely midnight. 3, then 4, then a barrage that vibrated her phone off the nightstand. Sleep became a luxury, replaced by a tense awareness, a constant waiting for the phone to erupt. Her friends noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the constant exhaustion clinging to her like a shroud. Desperate, Chloe decided to fight back. After the next midnight symphony, she unblocked the number and dialed it back. Silence. Just static, punctuated by the faint sound of ragged breathing. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't a telemarketer, it was someone deliberate, someone who wanted to scare her. Driven by a mix of fear and defiance, Chloe decided to take matters into her own hands. During lunch the next day, she scanned the cafeteria, her eyes darting from table to table. Then she saw him, Simon, the quiet boy from her English class. He often sat alone, lost in a book, his gaze flickering to her every now and then. Confronting him felt like walking into a spiderweb. He stammered apologies, his face flushing scarlet. He confessed, it was him, the midnight calls. He'd gotten her number from the class list, a pathetic attempt to connect with her. He said he was shy, didn't know how to talk to her. But his shyness didn't excuse the terror he'd inflicted. Chloe laid it out plain, she didn't like him, the calls were creepy and needed to stop. Simon, crestfallen, promised it wouldn't happen again. Relief washed over her, so intense it almost felt like a physical sensation. That night, however, the phone buzzed again. 12 a.m. This time, the caller ID wasn't just a number. It was a name. Simon, loves you. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. The calls didn't stop. Now, they were accompanied by texts, cryptic messages at first, then increasingly desperate pleas for her attention. Chloe felt a new kind of fear creep in. This wasn't a scared boy anymore. This was obsession. Simon started showing up everywhere. Outside her house, at the bus stop, even lurking in the background during lunch. His once shy demeanor vanished, replaced by a hungry glint in his eyes. Her friends offered to walk her home, but everywhere she went, the feeling of being watched persisted. One day, a single red rose lay on her desk at school, a note tucked into its stem. "You'll see how perfect we could be," it read, in a scrawled handwriting she recognized all too well. Panic clawed at her throat. This couldn't go on. Chloe knew she had to involve the authorities, but the fear of escalating Simon's behavior kept her silent. Trapped between exhaustion and terror, she existed in a constant state of hypervigilance. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by fragmented nightmares filled with Simon's obsessive gaze. One night, a different kind of sound jolted her awake. A rhythmic scraping at her window. Chloe stared, frozen, as a pale face pressed against the glass. Simon, his eyes burning with manic devotion. That's when she finally screamed, a primal cry of fear that echoed through the night. It was the scream that broke the dam of her fear, the scream that propelled her to seek help before it was too late. The story didn't end with a neat resolution. The restraining order helped, but the feeling of being watched lingered, a shadow forever cast by the boy who couldn't handle rejection. The midnight calls became a horrifying memory, a reminder of the nightmarish nights and the boy with love as twisted as a barbed wire rose. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and comment.